right. Good morning, Scoop Nation. Welcome to the Morning Scoop. It is December 28th, aka Thursday, or no, it's Wednesday. What am I thinking? We are 3 days away from the game versus Georgia here in the Peach Bowl. So I am joined once again by none other than TJ Downing to talk a little bit about the game, a little bit about some tampering news potentially, a little bit more about some opt outs, the state of college football, if you will, right now, and we're gonna dive into it. Before we do, of course, as always, just be sure to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And check out BuckeyeScoop.com and join in on all the conversations about all of these topics and so much more on the best damn recruiting board and the best damn media site for Ohio State football at the best damn site, period. BuckeyeScoop.com. Go ahead and check it out and join today. And with that, TJ, let's dive into it, man. 3 days, 3 more days. We're almost
I
here.
think this is that moment where a lot of guys they either know they're prepared or you're getting a little nervous knowing that you're getting ready to play the number one team in the country. So I would lean towards the first one. That all the time that you've had since that Michigan game, this is something that you've wanted. You've wanted a chance to redeem yourself. You've wanted an opportunity to show the college football world that you belong, that a bad half of football isn't going to define you, although it was against your rival in the greatest rivalry in sports. This is a moment right here that could kind of it could right some wrongs and potentially lead to some even better things on the backside. A, national championship. B, hopefully a chance to beat the Wolverines. They still have to handle their hurdle, but I know that 3 days out that locking in on the Bulldogs, I think the focus is there. I think you've got everybody's kind of gotten past the Jackson Smith and Jigba not playing. I think the game plan is in place. Guys are now, you've had your hard practices. It's basically now just you're in cruise control until kickoff at 8 o'clock on Saturday night.
Yeah, and I will say it's like I don't know how to feel about the game. Like I feel positive in that I think Ohio State can win this game. Do I think that that's actually how it plays out? Maybe not. I mean, it's a tough task to handle. That's for sure. And there hasn't been too much confidence, in this team given to me over the last few weeks of the season. So it's hard for me to see it, but when you hear all the coaches talking about it in the press conferences, how this team has a mentality going into this game of you've heard a lot of the players saying it's always been Ohio against the world, Ohio against the world, and we all know that as fans, of course, especially if you live, I don't know, in Nashville, Tennessee, when you're in SEC country, because then it literally is me against the world, out there. So it's you got to wear everything on your sleeve at that point. But I don't know, man. Like part of me wants to believe that this is 2014 repeated, but I don't know. I don't know what to think until we actually see it on the field. But if what the coaches are saying, what the players are saying, if everything that's coming out from these last few weeks is true, and this team is healthy and this team is ready to go and they're ready to punch Georgia in the mouth and come out firing, then it could go well.
Let's think about all the question marks that surrounded 2014. I mean, yeah, you had in front of you not only with Cardale Jones being inserted and having to beat the Wisconsin Badgers, which they just absolutely annihilated them to be able to get in to the first ever CFP. But then, Alabama, Oregon. I mean, at that time, those two they were it. They were the powerhouses, and it was, hey, we're coming in the number 4 spot like we are now. Do I think that that this Georgia team compared to that Bama team, how is that apples to apples? That Bama team was loaded, but the one thing that we don't have, our question mark right now, is a running back who can produce 200 plus yards on the ground like Zeke did.
What are you
That's
talking about, bro? We got
obviously
Chip.
I don't care. We do have Chip. I love Chip, and Chip's going to be able to get it done for us. But when you're bringing in a quarterback who's making his second start,
Mhm.
and you've got a running back who gives you 225 yards or so on the ground, it makes it a lot easier for you. Opens some things up, puts everybody into the box, and even putting everybody in the box, Zeke still ran through it. I don't think that that's what this Ohio State offense is capable of doing
No.
right now. But I think that CJ Stroud with Marvin Harrison, with all these with this deep receiver room that we've talked about since training camp. Where all these guys are gonna have to transfer out like JMO did the year before because you're not gonna get to play because it's so deep. And to hear some rumors coming out of practice that Jaden Ballard might be in the fold now, that
Yeah.
maybe this is going to be an opportunity for him to shine, a la kind of like Cardale, hey, just throw him in there, kind of catch everybody off guard. Maybe you get some jets, maybe you get some reverses, maybe as you probably prayed for at Christmas time, a couple bubble
Oh
screens.
yeah.
um, but it's just, it's hard to compare. But again, that was a tall task back then. I don't think anybody really gave us a whole lot of chance to get it done, and we did. So, it goes back to the old adage, cliche. That's why you line up and play the football game. I think we line up and we play the Georgia Bulldogs and we beat them. I think what's on the backside in the national championship game might be a little bit easier.
Mhm.
Similar to beat Bama, I think Oregon was an easier test than beating Bama.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you have the one thing I look at 2014 too is like playing all of the top 3 Heisman candidates in consecutive weeks in the Big Ten championship against Alabama and then against Oregon. And that's never an easy task to overcome anyways. And that Oregon team was much different than the Oregon teams that we know today as well. And I think they got the benefit of the doubt from Marcus Mariota in a lot of ways that year, and without him, that it wasn't a very good team outside of that. So,
Yeah.
and like, you shut him down or you slow him down a little bit, and it's a much easier team to beat, and especially for the national championship. So, I agree with you there, and I think too, like looking back at this year, like you mentioned, Jaden Ballard. Why haven't we seen him? Well, maybe he hasn't been too healthy for the majority of the year. I think we're kind of finding out that there's a lot of guys on this roster that were a little bit banged up, a little bit more banged up maybe than we thought or than what we knew, just because to his credit, Ryan Day doesn't give a lot of injury updates or prognosis or information for teams to go off of. So, if Georgia's planning on Ohio State coming out with the status quo from the last 2-3 weeks of the season, maybe it is a little bit different. If we have Mayan Williams healthy, if we have Chip Trayanum healthy, if we have Dallin Hayden healthy, if we have Jaden Ballard and Marvin Harrison and Mecca Egbuka, who I saw a report that he wasn't able to lift his arm above his head at points during the season. So like, I don't know. I mean, it does. If this team is healthy on paper, I think you look at it, this team is definitely on par, if not more talented than this Georgia team, at least on offense. And so that gives me hope. If like I said, if they are fully healthy or even 90% for the most part, then I think we will see some guys that come in and start to make some bigger plays. One that I saw the other day that CJ had mentioned was Kojo Antwi, which just kind of like came out of left field to me.
Yeah.
Like hadn't heard that name all year long. Obviously he was a Georgia kid. I think that there was a lean there at the end that we pulled in the recruiting cycle. So that could be an interesting little wrinkle as well.
And yeah, it makes it kind of hard to do your job as a receiver if you can't lift your arm above your head,
Mm.
right? I mean, that's kind of something that needs to be in the arsenal there. But for me, one of the cool stories that could really unfold here. How about Cameron Babb?
Hmm.
He was able to get in there at the end of the season after everything that he's been through, after all of the surgeries, after all the promise, and to get that first touchdown. And now I think what that gives him confidence wise is, hey, you know what? Yeah, there's a reason that these guys they voted me as a captain. There's a reason that these guys believe in me as a senior after just it was a career that didn't pan out the way that he wanted to. So now you have a chance maybe to fill in there for a couple guys that
Hmm.
are a little bit banged up, and that could be one of the all time great stories if it unfolds that way. Cameron Babb comes in here and kind of saves the day
Yeah,
in the receiving room.
I think I'd actually put out a tweet. I think it was after the Michigan game, but it was towards the end of the year. It was after he had caught that touchdown, and I was like, man, what if the storyline was, Ohio State gets into the playoff, wins the first round, ends up playing Michigan in the national championship, and the game-winning touchdown is caught by none other than Cameron Babb, corner of the end zone, makes a fantastic catch or something like that, and then just the storyline of his career is kind of cemented in the impact that he's been able to make without actually being able to even get on the field and play, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, this could be exciting. I'm hoping for him, and I'm believing that that this offense is going to get it done. And as we've talked about all year long, none of those guys can do what they do if you don't have the offensive line in front of you. So that's the group to really keep your eye on. Hopefully they've got their head and their focus in the right
Hmm.
place. Because at times it hasn't seemed that way, but a couple accolades have come in for some of the guys. Um, it's a group that again on paper you look at what Paris Johnson is able to do. I mean, yeah, we've talked to our Scoop CEO before about how this guy's going to be a first round draft pick. He's one of the best offensive tackles, if not the best offensive tackle in the country. Dewan, we know the massive mountain of a man that he is. Donovan has showed a lot of promise. Luke is at a point now where it's like, okay, the light bulb should have turned on because you've had enough starts under your belt
Hmm.
to now start to enter into the realm of be the best center in the country. When you're at Ohio State and you're breaking the huddle and you think about all the other centers that have come before you, the Nick Mangolds and the Charles Bentleys, and
Hmm.
we can go on and on and on that list. It's time for Luke to assume that role and act that way. Walk to the line of scrimmage with an attitude in that
Yeah.
manner. So I know that there's been issues with Matt over at guard. I know that he's been banged up a lot. We've talked about when Josh has been in there. Has it looked a little bit better at times? Yeah. Does he bring more toughness? I don't know. After he
Hmm.
walked away from the flag gate. We'll see though. I think those guys are the heartbeat of the unit. Though they've got to get it done. If they give CJ the time that he needs, he'll get stuff done. Even though that's a great Georgia defense, give CJ
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 seconds, he'll find an open target.
I mean, you saw it with Tennessee, you saw it with Alabama last year, you saw it with LSU this year. Like, if there is one area that this Georgia defense can be beaten at times, is just like you mentioned. You give the quarterback some time to find an open receiver. Secondary is a little bit suspect at times, and you can put up yards through the air pretty easily against them. So if that's the case, and that's happening with this passing offense under Ryan Day, then I feel good about it. Assuming he's actually taking some deep shots over the top and not just throwing little swing routes, bubble routes, whatever else we've seen all year. But to the credit of with Kevin Wilson leaving, maybe Brian Hartline has stepped up into some of that role and taken on some of the maybe not play calling necessarily, but kind of play formation, and has made his voice a little bit more well known in that aspect over the last few weeks. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's exactly what Ryan Day needed in order to kind of open up that playbook a little bit and start to loosen the reins on that role.
Well, when it comes to running routes I've always said this since we got smoked in a national championship game by Florida. You are not going to beat an SEC team unless you stretch the field. It has to happen. somewhere throughout the ball game. You have to take shots downfield, and I think Brian's about that life.
Mhm.
You know, he lived it in the NFL. He be I think originally when he came into the fold for us at Ohio State, he was more of that second slot guy, kind of falling into the next prototype of Anthony Gonzalez. But then Brian kind of showed once he got to the league, he could stretch the field, he could go deep. He was a home run shot type guy, and I think that's the same type of play calling that he would bring to the table,
Mhm.
given the opportunity. And as you said, you know, this is a Georgia team that can be beat in the secondary. Up front, it's a different story.
Yeah.
You got probably the best defensive tackle in the country. You got one of the best linebackers in the country. Uh, that's going to be a tall task. But if you can get some of those guys out of the box, if you can get five guys on five guys because they're having to go into nickel packages because you're torching them deep, you're
Mhm.
torching them over the middle. Let's make sure that we're not forgetting about Cade Stover.
Yep.
When you're working those seams and you're working those vertical routes and you're working those post routes, we got that tight end in the middle there. We know that he's capable. Um, that's the old challenge, the old chess match. And I think that Brian Hartline, when he speaks up in that room, when they talk about game plan,
Mhm.
scripting, there's going to be some home run shots involved there.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw it too, but earlier in the week there, CJ was wearing a Stover Farms sweatshirt. So I mean, he's ready. He's ready to get the guy involved. That's for sure.
What
But
do what do they grow over there at Silver Farms? That's what I want to know.
massive human beings. That's what they grow.
Yes, they do.
But while kind of on the subject of Brian Hartline as well, we know his recruiting prowess. We know what he's been able to build in that room with 5-star talent, a high 4-star talent, turning 3-star talent into first round picks, what have you. So arguably the best wide receiver room to be in the entire country. But yet we get reports, various reports. How accurate are they? How true are they? Who really knows? I mean, when you get conflicting information like that, it's hard to know, okay, exactly who's telling the truth. So you just believe who you trust the most, I guess. I think it's a mix of both. I think in those cases, right, when you got two sides of one story, it's probably the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? So the news is Lincoln Riley reaching out to Marvin Harrison Jr., tampering, if you will, if you're a NFL, NBA, if that's what college football is turning into, it just seems. Um, so, what level of tampering is there in college football? Is Marvin Harrison Jr. mulling a decision to go out to USC? I don't think so. I don't think he's really entertaining that. I don't know why you would. But do I think, if you're asking me, do I think Lincoln Riley or just coaches in general throughout college football are actively tampering? I would say yes.
100%. And this really goes all the way back to uh, before NIL days. It goes back to when you used to have those recruiting dead periods. How many
Mm,
coaches? I think back to even like a Brett Bielema and certain guys that would get flagged because there was a certain time when you just could not reach out to recruits, but coaches were always pushing the limits or finding a way around it.
mhm.
Hey, let's get a runner over there in Kenosha to be able to go down there and talk to this 5-star running back, even though it's a dead period, because we know that now everybody in the country is trying to talk to this guy. So, however it works out, you're gonna try and find a way to get to this dude. Or back in my day as well, they would try and reach out to your family members. If they can't get directly to you,
Mhm.
let's find a way to get to your dad. Let's find a way to get to your sister. Let's find a way to get to a cousin that's got a great relationship with you. That can say, hey, this guy's telling me this, telling me that. It might be worth you looking into, even though it's a dead period, and that's completely against NCAA rules. What the NIL and transfer portal era has shown us thus far is that when you throw money into the mix, anything is
Mhm.
possible. So if you can jump ship and leave and put 1, 2, $3 million in your pocket, you're going to do that. You know, and I think the good thing about Marvin Harrison is he comes from money already.
Mhm.
You know, so we've heard stuff from him, I believe, earlier in the year where it was like he wasn't taking a lot of the NIL stuff because he didn't need it, and he just wanted to focus on football and not have money be a distraction. Because you know when you've got a dad who's made millions and millions of
Mhm.
dollars in the NFL and in different businesses, it's different. But when you're somebody like, you're somebody that's coming from a single mother household, who maybe your mom made $24,000 on paper last year, yeah, it's attractive. I don't think there's any reason for Marvin Harrison Jr. to want to leave, nor would you want to go from being in as you said the best wide receiver room in the country. Now I know there's some question marks about who's going to be playing quarterback next
Yep.
year, but you've already got rapport with those guys. You've already caught passes in practice, in training camp, in spring ball from Kyle McCord. So to think that there's a potential, there always is whenever there's dollars behind it. But knowing that the landscape that we live in now, it's not that far
Yeah.
fetched to think that somebody could up and leave right after the season's over and transfer out, knowing that you're not going to have to sit. There's going to be no penalty against your eligibility, and that you could go light it up on the West Coast when you just lit it up in the Midwest. The opportunity is there for these kids to do that. To me, it just that right there, I don't even know if you call that a lateral move. I think
Mhm.
it's a little bit backwards. Although Lincoln Riley has come in there and he's changed USC around because USC over the last few years was a stinker. So now you've got Lincoln Riley. Now you've got Caleb. You've got guys. You've got dudes. You've got recruits. It's cool to go back and play for USC again, kind of
Mhm.
like a la Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart days. It's cool to be a Trojan again. But at
I mean,
times it
and I mean,
wasn't.
like it's Southern California. Like it's an attractive place to just be in general, whether or not USC is good. It's always that allure of it. So it's not surprising. I
If
would agree
anybody
with
knows
that.
anything about the snowstorm that we just got up here in
Right.
Ohio through the holidays, yeah, South Beach looks pretty cool.
Yeah. I think too with that, like with just having money behind it and everything. The other piece of what NIL has kind of become is like there's just no I don't think anybody's afraid of the NCAA anymore. When it comes to like potentially, breaking rules or, doing something that might be considered illegal, or trying to find loopholes, they're just not worried about the NCAA cracking down on anything and like actually enforcing something because nobody knows what the rules should be at this point. And so yeah, guys that, are going to be doing this, or if you believe the reports that Ohio State offered Drake May $5 million or whatever, like I mean, it's gonna happen when you have those guys because a lot of these coaches like are not worried about what's gonna happen to them, if they get quote unquote quote caught, tampering with a player or another team or what have you, because nobody knows what to do with it.
Yeah, you said the key word too, free agency. I mean, literally, this is like it's open market, it's free agency, and at that point, all you got to do is go out and find the money. And when you're a school like Ohio State, although I thought it was kind of bush league that Gene Smith is coming out here talking about, oh, we got to have this collective and cooperative, and you know, reach out to the dudes that got their name on the scoreboard. I mean, that's where your money's at.
Hmm.
You could put together, as I've talked about before, within 24 hours, there's 30 to 50 people on a call list. Some of the most powerful people in the era. Some of the most powerful players in the business game that you could call, and you could put together a slush fund of $30 million. So go out and get that money. I don't know. I didn't listen to the entire presser that he did because, quite frankly, makes me want to throw up, like my daughter was doing all last night.
Yeah.
But you know, wherever they're trying to find this money at, it's there.
Hmm.
And you've got some power players down there. I know that right now it sounds like next president of the university could potentially be John Kasich, our former governor. That would be a guy right there who knows a lot of people who
Yeah.
could come in there and could help and assist if you are trying to free agent or recruit or bring in players from other teams. That's how you get it done right there. The old saying, follow the money. That's all you got to do. Put the money together and you can go out and you can bring the best talent in the country to Ohio State. It's crazy to think that that's how the game is played now because it pisses me off that I'm about 20 years behind the curve here. But put the money together and you'll get dudes to show up.
Yeah, and too, I mean, you mentioned it with John Kasich, but like, there's gonna be some level of legislation, some level of oversight, something that's likely going to happen over the next few years. And having a guy like that who has spent his entire career in politics, talking with the people that are going to be kind of deciding that at a national level potentially, then there can be some voices in the room to propose ideas, propose um different tactics or regulations or what have you. But also Ohio State can kind of be on the inside of that in a way, if that is part of that conversation, and can get a little bit of a head start if it needs to. But yeah, I agree, it's the money is there. It's just for whatever reason I can't put my finger on it. I don't know why Ohio State would be lacking or would be behind in those regards. I think I said it on the podcast that I had. I think I have my beliefs about whether a nonprofit is the right way to go solely. I think a lot of what I've kind of seen is that these collectives need to be almost a branch of the university, or they need to be affiliated together. So, Gene Smith's got to work with somebody at some point to create this in a way that's going to be successful. And we'll see how that landscape changes over the next few years. But the other kind of piece of that obviously is opt out. So I mean, obviously we have players that are being tampered with, potentially players that are getting contacted to leave. I think I saw something earlier this morning about like how weird it is to just watch a quarterback playing in a bowl game who's already announced that he's transferring to another school.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, like, what do you, I mean, I get it. Like, yeah, finish your season, but at the same time, coaches do it. I mean, Kevin Wilson is a great example at this point. Like came out, said he's got about 70% of his focus and attention is on preparing for, this game against Georgia, which I get. He just got a lot of responsibilities now with being head coach at Tulsa, but you've had it with coaches, and now you're kind of seeing it with players and guys that are just opting out of either the bowl games for the NFL draft, which I get, or even just opting out to go play eventually at another school by entering the transfer portal. It's just a weird situation. And, Jackson Smith and Jigba were obviously not, immune to any of this. We'd love to see him play in this game. But obviously he's not.
Yeah, I thought it was weird last night. I was watching the Birmingham Bowl, and the quarterback for East Carolina, who's a guy that potentially will be getting some looks to play some type of professional football, whether it be the NFL, whether it be the USFL, XFL, whatever it may be. Um, he had his two number one receivers. They decided to opt out, and they wanted to prepare for the NFL draft. I'm thinking, damn, dude, you're at East Carolina and you're doing this, and I guess it doesn't really matter, what Division I school you're at when you're doing it. But to think for that quarterback who's trying to showcase himself,
Mm-hmm.
and he ended up doing a pretty good job of it. I think they ended up beating Coastal Carolina like 53 to 23. But you lose your top two receivers as you're getting ready to showcase your arm for the NFL. Like, damn, man, that's a kick into like how
Well, I wonder
and
now too
how much further you got to go down the depth chart,
yeah.
And you're thinking now I'm rolling into my biggest game of my career, and I'm throwing to a dude that probably haven't thrown to all year.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder too now, how much the scouts factor that aspect in as well when it comes to like, okay, these used to be the biggest games, on the biggest stages, what does this player do under pressure, under the lights, in those atmospheres. But now I feel like it's more like the Pro Bowl, where it's just like, okay, these are just exhibition games. We don't put much, stake into them unless it's a college football playoff game, or unless it's maybe a New Year's Six game, because a lot of the times players don't opt out of those games. But um, I'm curious to, I guess, know how much of that factors into whether or not these scouts, as they're looking at, okay, how is this kid going to perform at the next level, do they look at this game and see like, okay, these players are out, such and such opted out, so we can't really evaluate that? Or do they even, honestly, I wouldn't even look at these games anymore, just because to me, for a lot of the kids, it just doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I don't think it does, and I uh, I I got to say this is going back probably about 6 7 years, but I got on social media and was like ranting and raving because I was watching. I think it was maybe like the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, and Josh Rosen from UCLA opted out of playing in this game, and I'm like, come on, dude, like it's tough, and so many things have changed since then. But it's just tough to think that you would walk away from your boys that you've been doing this with for so long, that you kind of all came in a recruiting class together and said, hey, our goal is to do this, and we've talked about Jackson. We don't know if he's healthy, if he is, whatever it may be. Um, to know that you're giving up an opportunity to go out and face the number one team in the country, and to potentially go out there and win a national championship for the Ohio State University. And you've opted out of all of that. Now,
Mhm.
let's just say the Buckeyes do win a national championship. Does he deserve a championship ring?
Okay,
I
I
mean,
think
he was he was he
he'll
was there
get
throughout the
one.
regular season.
He'll get one. Whatever, we all know that he will
He,
get one.
he didn't even really do a whole lot during the regular season. We I mean, first couple weeks we saw him, then he got banged up, and then it was like, okay, where's Jackson? Did they bring him back too early? He came back about like 3 or 4 weeks later, ran like 2 or 3 plays, and then we didn't see him again. Um, so
I
yeah,
wonder
you'll get
too,
a
because
ring.
like, I mean,
You're on
in
the
honest,
roster, but come
I
on,
don't know.
dude.
I don't know that he has really anything to gain in playing in this game. With just to your point, right? You haven't seen him play all year. We saw the last time we really saw him in game action was the Rose Bowl, and he obviously had a phenomenal Rose Bowl performance, historic Rose Bowl performance. So we know what he's capable of. But then if he comes into this game, let's say, and he hasn't played to your point all year, and who knows what happens if he comes into this game and just maybe he's not 100% in game form. He isn't 100% prepared to take on the number one team in the country, because not only is that a physical difficult matchup, but also if you haven't played all year, it's tough to get back into that rhythm against a tough opponent like that. So maybe he comes out, he has a bad game. Okay, well, now all of a sudden his draft stock is plummeting because the only game action that we've seen, in a year, he may not perform as well. So like, if he comes in and plays phenomenally, it doesn't drastically improve his draft stock either. So, you know, if you're weighing the pros and cons over this, other than playing with your boys, and going out and competing for a national championship, which is a strong factor, I'm sure, you know, what's it going to do to his draft stock, and if he's going to risk it further injuring his hamstring, and dropping his draft stock even more after that. Not that I think it would. I mean, we've seen it with guys like Jalen Waddle. We've seen it with guys like Jamison Williams, who still get drafted first round despite season-ending injuries, for an entire last year. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors. I get why he wouldn't, because I don't know that there's too much to benefit for him personally when it comes to his next step in his career by playing in this game. But I mean, you and I are of the era of, no, it's Ohio State. You go out and you bleed for this team, and you play however you need to play in order to help this team get a win. And like, yeah, well, I would love to see it. You would love to see it. I think everybody in Scoop Nation would love to see it because we're all kind of in that same mindset. But I also understand it. I get where, he would have that kind of decision on his mind.
Right, and you say. I mean, you've got everything to lose, not a whole lot to gain, other than it's a respect thing. It's what did old Carmen, Ohio say? Our honor defend, we will fight to
Hmm.
the end for Ohio. um, I think too that as you mentioned, scouts and the way they probably look at some of these opt out guys, um, and guys that are working with maybe the fourth, fifth, sixth string receivers. The same can be said for uh, looking at or grading or evaluating a Jackson Smith and Jigba. If he comes out here, listen, we all eventually sometime throughout playing any sport are going to fall off the horse, and the horse is going to kick us, and we're going to get hurt. But eventually, you've got to jump back up on the horse. You've got to saddle up. You've got to
Hmm.
get back on. Um, if you're 100% and you're ready to go, I can't see why jumping back on the horse would be any better timing than against the number one team in the country in Georgia. How much? What if he goes out and balls out? Has
Hmm.
like 150-yard performance, 2-3 touchdowns. Now you go top three. Now you're leveling up your paper a little bit more. So there's so many different factors that go into it. Obviously, health is number one. If you're not, let's just say between 90 to 95% or higher, makes no sense to go out there and play the game. I look back to a Ted Ginn Jr. situation,
Hmm.
when he got injured on that opening kickoff, and it really that took a lot of steam out of our ship, man. And could you tape it up and get back in there? Maybe. Could you tape it up, go back out there and do more damage and affect your future playing career? Maybe. So those were
Hmm.
things that factored into that decision of not coming back into the game. Different scenario, but similar in regards to your health
Yeah.
and a receiver and your legs. That's your bread and butter, man. You
Yeah.
got to have great hands, but if you can't separate, if you can't run great routes, if you come back and you re-aggravate something, again, talked about Anthony Gonzalez earlier. Anthony Gonzalez he was going like that
Hmm.
with Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts, and they brought him back too early, and he was never the same again, and it derailed his NFL career. So you don't want to push the issue on anything, but eventually you got to get back up on the horse,
Yeah.
right? Can't think of
That's
a
what
better time to do it.
that's what I wonder about too with like bringing him back for the Toledo game. Um,
Yes,
you
yes,
know.
that was the game. And it was almost like he was in like a blocking situation. They weren't even throwing him the ball, and you could just tell, like, why
Well,
would you
pitch
why would you
count or
put him in
not,
a
I mean,
ball?
like, he was supposed to have a pitch count or anything. I mean, like, it was still, if you're looking at, okay, is it a hamstring injury? And like, why is he still not 100% 2.5 months later, but you were trying to play him 2 weeks later,
Against
in a game that didn't matter, in a
Toledo.
game that you didn't know, you didn't need him to play in that
Yeah.
game. And like, what impact or what significant level of a re-injury did he get in that game that impeded his progress for the rest of the season? We may never truly know, but I'm sure that's also something that weighs on his mind coming into these situations where it's like, you know, I've done this already once before and it set me back weeks and weeks and weeks from getting back to a position where I was ready to go. I think he's more healthy than maybe we think, but I don't think he's still 100% healthy. And maybe it's a not 100% healthy from a mental standpoint because you do have that lingering in the back of your mind. Well, the last time I was out there, I tweaked this even worse. So
Those are fast
definitely,
twitch those are fast
yeah,
twitch guys, man, and they rely on those cuts. They rely on that explosiveness coming off the line of scrimmage, your get off. All of that starts with that hamstring, man, and if that thing is not in the right spot, again, you don't wanna rush that thing back too early. it can sit there and it can hamper you and hinder you into the rest of your career. So it could be the smart move. If you're 100%, I'm lining up and playing.
Yep.
But if I'm 90%, at that point, it's like, okay, why push it? Because there's a potential second
Mhm.
and third contract in the NFL 6, 7 years down the line from now that I want to still be around to be able to
Yep.
cash in on.
And you got guys now in your ear telling you all about those things,
Yeah.
with
Yep.
what's going to happen after these next few weeks, of this game this weekend. Should Ohio State play in the national championship? What happens after that? If you're Jackson Smith and Jigba, and you got multiple guys that are explaining to you the type of money that you're putting at risk potentially by coming back maybe a little too early, or playing when you're not 100%. So it's there's a lot of factors I think that go on behind the scenes for a lot of these types of situations. But then you just have the guys that are playing in the bowls that nobody really cares too much about, and those guys that are just opting out because they want to start preparing, they want to start having the conversations with agents, they want to just get into that process rather than get into a process to go win the Gasparilla Bowl. You know, as
Get
alluring as
yourself
that is.
you win MVP, you get a free recliner.
Hey, all right. I'll suit up.
Rest
Yeah, give me a
rest up,
call.
man. If your knees a little sore, you can tilt back at a certain level
Mm,
and get some elevation while you ice it.
yeah, perfect, perfect. It's a win-win situation either way. But it also, as we are now 3 days away, I know we talked a little bit about this before, but it threw me back to one of the biggest plays of the last championship run that we had, which was the Devin Smith end around tossed to the only person I could think of when I think of who wore number 3 for Ohio State, or who is the most impactful player to wear the number 3 at Ohio State. The one and only Michael Thomas, toe tap, dragging it in the corner, front corner of the end zone to what was it? That was to get it to 21-20 before halftime. So one of the biggest plays I can remember in my Ohio State history, but also one of the most impactful number 3s. So I ask you, TJ, before we sign off here, when you think of a player at Ohio State to wear the number 3, who is the first person to come to your mind?
Well, it goes back to my days playing, man. And this was a guy that he may not have been a number one. He may not have been, when it came to game planning, a guy that you're saying, hey, we're gonna make an effort to get him the ball or get him a couple touches here at least, 6, 7 times a game. But Bam Childress, sporting
Mhm.
number 3, a Chanel guy, was just a phenomenal, freakish athlete, great speed, the most reliable hands, a team player, would do every special teams, would do anything he could to get on the field, and he was on the field, and he had an attitude, he carried a swagger with himself, was always considered one of the was a team favorite, was a fan favorite. People loved Bam Childress, and I always had a lot of respect for the way that Bam carried himself, the way that Bam prepared, and the way that Bam played. Him and I, we got a chance to line up a lot with each other in 2004, his senior year, my sophomore year, and he was at times a safety valve for whatever quarterback, whether it was Troy Smith or Justin Zwick that was in there. Bam Childress was, you could always count on Bam Childress to bring it, whether it was even just being an emotional leader as well.
Mhm.
So when I think of the number 3, I think of Bam Childress, and I want to leave you with this as well too, because I know that we're just on the backside of signing up or finishing up the recruiting and National Signing Day, and there was a guy that we've been able to talk about a little bit through some of our podcasts out of the vault over there at our office, Stark Media Group's offices in Massillon, Ohio, in downtown Massillon. And I don't know if you saw this, but a guy that we've talked about who is going to come in there and try and add a little bit of depth to the running back room, Will Trell Hartson, the Massillon
Oh yeah.
Tiger running back. is going to come on as a walk-on, a preferred walk-on to the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I've told you about this before, and I'm just giving a special shout out to this kid here real quick. And he wears number 4, so we'll add a +1 onto that 3. Don't know what he's going to wear down there at Ohio State, but I think he's a guy that's going to add some good depth to that running back room. We've been concerned for a while now that, with guys getting banged up, with Evan Pryor going down, with Mayan getting banged up, with Trev getting, banged up, wearing a boot on the sideline. Not sure how much we're going to see from him. I think Will Trell's a guy, even though he's a walk-on, he's a guy that's got an attitude. He's got a physical prowess in how he runs the ball. I think once he gets down there with Coach Mick and he kind of develops some of that more high-end, top-end speed, he's going to be a guy that could eventually develop into being a full scholarship guy. Could end up being a guy that people start coming after in the transfer portal, saying, hey, listen, man, come here. We're going to put you on full scholarship. We're going to give you some cash. Come over here, and you're going to be our number 1. But it was good to see that a guy that we've talked about on this show before, Will Trell Hartson from the Massillon Tigers, one of the best running backs, one of the best players in the state of Ohio this year. Although going away from the full scholarship, which he had a couple of them on the table, UAB, Alabama Birmingham being one of them. He's going to walk on to Ohio State, and that's going to add some depth right there instantly. Even though he's not a scholarship guy, he's a guy that can run the rock.
I will gladly take an Ohio kid that turns down full scholarship to walk on at Ohio State and just compete. Yeah. And good things can happen. I mean, you've seen guys like Mayan Williams, who wasn't super highly sought after in the recruiting process, and come in and just get to work, and may take a couple years before you start to make that impact that you can make. But guys like that can and often do make some sort of impact in that room. So I'll be curious to kind of watch that career. But you said number 4, and it made me think of. So I was trying to think of yesterday. I could think of way more people that wore number 4 for obvious reasons. You got your Santonio Holmes and your Kurt Coleman's, Kirk Herbstreets, and your Curtis Samuels. Everybody that you can kind of think of that wore number 4. Well, there's one obscure player who I'm pretty sure that he only ever returned kicks occasionally for Ohio State. But he was there when I was going through the university, kind of same timeline, coming in and leaving. Transferred to Murray State, I believe, but for whatever reason, my dorm, my floor, Stradley Hall, 11, penthouse, baby, for whatever.
They used to call it Straddle Me Hall.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my sister was in Stradley. I was in Stradley. Like, for whatever, it's a family thing now. We're a part of it. But for whatever reason, our floor was just obsessed with Jamal Berry.
Jamal,
of all people. And I don't even know why. There's a couple, factors I can think of, but one of the girls on our floor, shout out Lindsay, just had a song, and I don't know where it came from. I don't know if she'd heard it somewhere. I don't know if she just made it up or if this was just what was going on in her head. But it was just like Jamal Berry. And that was it. And so for whatever reason, that just kickstarted this whole love affair with Jamal Berry for all of us on Stradley floor 11 from 2009 until 2012. So shout out to everybody, Penthouse, Stradley, if you're listening. But also shout out to you, Jamal Berry, number 4 in my heart.
Now, you gotta say, when you say shout out to Jamal Berry, you gotta say it like you just did though. Shout out to Jamal Berry.
Jamal Berry. So yes, obscure players, love it. Excited to see what Will Trell can bring to the Ohio State Buckeyes in a few years potentially. But TJ, that's going to do it for us. As always, we go to right about that hour mark, which is great. So always a pleasure having you on, and Scoop Nation, always a pleasure having you watch and listen. So thank you for your continued support, TJ. Brother,
go Bucks.
We'll talk again later this week, I'm sure. But until then, yeah, like you said. Go Bucks.
Lock in, man. Championship on the line, man.
Yes, sir. Let's get it.